So, good morning, good afternoon. Today will be our last lecture together. So, starting from Friday, Professor Mazero will be here with you in order to go through the main topic, main social issues that we will cover in this module. So, buondì. My voice today is not at its best, so I will stay here. And if you have problem to hear me, just say you can just say it to me. Okay. So, which is the topic of today's lecture? We will go more in depth in some aspects related to digital economy and digital society. And in particular, I mentioned several times this concept of a platform related again with the network society, the information age, the digital economy. So today, the point is to better understand why a platform is so relevant today in our society and in our economy, which are the main taxonomies built around this topic. So we will see together that we can look at platform from different perspectives with different scholars, obviously with a lot of similarities among the different approaches. And we will also discuss some social issues, or in general, some issues that today are related with the diffusion of platforms in our economy and in our society. Again, so I heard some of your colleagues after the lecture on Friday that maybe the approach was too pessimistic during the lecture. But maybe the point is that I don't want to be pessimistic about these topics. The point is that maybe we were too much optimistic in the beginning looking at digital technologies. So we need to balance, not now starting to be just pessimistic, okay, we see social issues or issues everywhere. The point is that we need to know both the potential, the role, the positive effects on our society and on our economy, but on the other side, we need also to be aware of the social issues related on that. Also because, as we saw, today digital technologies, and in particular artificial intelligence, they are becoming quite relevant in our economic and social structures. It's not just an add-on or something that you can use or not. Using or not these technologies can affect your role in the society, or we mentioned the topic of digital divide. If you decide not to use this technology, somehow you decide to be outside social networks, social relationship. Or if you decide not to use digital technologies, for sure you can have some issue in your working life. So we need to balance, to have my opinion, we need to balance this perspective. So not too much optimistic, but neither pessimistic. Okay? So, and I'm not referring, and I'm not sure your colleague is here, no? Okay, don't worry. So the agenda of today. So first of all, we will look more in depth, as I mentioned, into this idea of the platform. So what is a platform? Why it is so relevant in our economy in particular? I already mentioned a couple of times in the past this idea of companies that are applying platform business models, that are leveraging platform in order to generate value, a great amount of value, economic value. So we will go over this in order to understand which are my main features and also the different classification of digital platform that we can have today. So this is just a way to show you that when we talk about these topics, we can find different approaches, different way in which scholars can define a platform. In particular, often the taxonomy, the definition, the classification of a platform can be determined by the area of study of a scholar. So, for example, if I'm coming from information technology or from a technological background, I can provide a specific definition of platform using technical terms, let me say. But here, our focus will be in particular on social aspects, economic aspects related to this idea of digital platform. So how we can classify digital platform from this perspective. Then we also go through relationship that today exists among market, civil society, and the state. So the role that we can have, the role of platform among these players. And again, we already discussed it a little bit last time that we today we are experiencing some shifts, some changes in the balance among forces in our society, in our market. We talk about the fact that today companies, private companies, are increasing their roles against other components of our society or our economy, for example, against the civil society. So also in this case, we will go through a little bit through this idea of the role of a platform among the relationship in this field. And we will also look at some example of platformization. So how, starting with the diffusion of some platform companies, now we are experiencing some sectors, some areas that today are become quite platform overall. And in the end, I will just introduce you with this concept, which is the shift from this idea of a platform economy to the concept of the hub economy. So in general, when we talk about a platform economy, and also, for example, if you think at Manuel Castells and his definition of a network, he started to stress the fact that some nodes are bigger than others. But here, with this shift from using the term platform economy to the term hub economy, we are stressing this idea that today we are seeing like an economy where we have some big platform economy that are playing as hub in specific sectors against this idea of a more shared platform among people, for example, in this idea of a sharing economy with people, with peer-to-peer participation to the economy and in generating value. So this is quite the agenda. So we can start a little bit with a chart that can help you to understand why we are talking about platform and platform economy. So this is not the last, it's not really updated at the month, it is updated at December 2024, but again, the idea is the same today. So maybe we have someone that is going a little bit down, someone that is a little bit moving, but the pictures, again, today is the same. So the first, if you want to look at the top 20 global companies by market value, at the end of 2024, we see that the first 5 companies are like tech companies and big tech companies, and in particular, if we will apply in a moment the definition of platform, we will see they are all leveraging platform business model. They are all leveraging platform as an idea, different type of platforms, not always the same, but in the end, they are all leveraging platforms, a platform structure in order to succeed in the market. So this is why we are stressing this idea of platform, why we are talking about networks, why we are talking about platforms in our economy, because it's just, and if it's quite common to look at this chart in the past, that in the last century, at the top of this chart, you have companies like General Electric or Exxon or big oil and gas companies, for example. Now the shift is quite complete. So if maybe you can find at some ExxonMobil again or some Walmart, but the Saudi Arabian oil co. So someone is still there, but the majority of them are companies related to new technologies, digital technologies, and in general to the information age and the platforms. And we have another chart that can help you to understand this topic from a geographical perspective. So the point is that is not that they are just at the top of the classification in terms of market value. The point is that we have also a concentration of value in few areas of the world. So the point is that today we have the 90% of the 17 largest platform market capitalization, which is generated by US and China. So the 90%, not the 50 or the 60, the 90. Europe is a follower. So if you think after today, and the definition that I will provide you, you can think at some platform in Europe, but in the end, the answer is, okay, SAP, Spotify in the Nordics, maybe, but it's quite difficult to find some company that can somehow challenge these big companies here. And also other regions such as Africa are like far behind the dimension of the other regions. So it's not just a question of few companies, but also few regions, few geographical, so a strong concentration of value in our economy at a global scale. So maybe, okay, it's an economy on a global scale, but with some differences. And also, this is quite interesting if we want to look at the US versus the market capitalization of US tech giants compared to the most valuable European companies. I found this chart is about 2010 to 2021, but again, it's not so different today, maybe some shift, but not so much. So again, in US, you can find Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta. And in Italy, in Europe, the companies that can somehow compare in terms of generation of value, so the most valuable company in Europe today are not related to the information age, are quite related to, let me say, more a traditional idea of the economy. So we have LVMH, so luxury and retail, maybe it's not like we say luxury. Nestlé, so consumers, but consuming products. Roche, life science, healthcare, consumer. ASML maybe is quite moving, maybe near this idea of the tech company, but the dimension is quite different from the US tech giants. Maybe it's quite interesting that ASML is recently put some value, some investment in Mistral AI, And this is something maybe interesting in order to monitor for movements in the European tech scene. But Mistral, you know Mistral AI? Is the French large language model. This quite somehow is trying to challenge some bigger name in the world. And they are trying to invest in this company. So they invested in this company. So, but again, the picture is quite different. So to get started, I show you different companies with some names, for example, Apple, Amazon, and so on. And somehow I implied that they are platforms. So if you think of this company in general, according to you, what can be a platform? A digital one. So just any idea? Yes, very good. Yes, the focus is on data. Yes. Any other hint? Okay, good answer. You, I told you this last time, so okay. And anyone? Okay. So yes, I will use the definition of Van Dijk, Powell, and De Waal, which are some European scholars that provided some analysis about the platform society and platforms in the role of platform today in our economy, in our society. And they define a digital platform as something that is powered by data, automated and organized through algorithms and interfaces, formalized through ownership relationship oriented by precise business models, and governed by specific terms of use. So here is quite a definition, but the focus is for the first 2 points on technological features. So this idea that in order to have a platform, I need to have data and leveraging data, like the power by is by data, and also the role of algorithm in order to process and analyze them, this data, in order to create information, and to have interfaces in order to access them. The other 2 points are more related to economic relationship or in general business relationship in the platform. So the first point is stressing this idea of the ownership. So we need to have an owner of the relationship that are happening within the platform. And this owner must be formalized with a specific business model. And then we need also to have some terms of use, or in general, some rules that can govern how relationships are happening among the platforms. So the point here is that we have a platform with data and algorithm and interfaces, and then we have a series of relationships that are happening within this platform with technical structure, where we have clear roles of people on that, with a clear business model, so not just people be there, and with specific terms of use. So the government of the platform is quite relevant. We can also move from considering just a single platform, so this idea of, okay, I can have a single platform with these features, but I can move also to consider this idea of an ecosystem of platforms, so different platforms that are put together in order to leverage a larger amount of data and so create a larger amount of value. And then to arrive also, if we consider like overall an ecosystem of platform, converging all the platform available in the economy and the society, we can talk about a platform society. And indeed, an ecosystem of platforms can be defined as a set of interconnected platforms managed by specific mechanisms. So this is quite to give you a general idea, a picture, some initial definition of what is a platform. So some keywords to have in mind when we talk about this topic. Again, according to Van Dijk, Poel, and De Waal, so the scholars that I mentioned before, the definition from the previous slide, in the last 20 years, a set of networked platforms. So here we are talking about not just single platform, but companies that somehow are becoming or became a networked platform, so an ecosystem of platforms, has evolved to concentrate a lot of power in the hands of a few corporations. And the center of this ecosystem is dominated by 5 high-tech companies, that is the Alphabet, Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. So the companies that we saw in the beginning, in the first slides, are here from scholars highlighted as the companies, the corporations that are concentrating market power and somehow that they are becoming the center of this ecosystem of platforms. If you consider these companies, but more in general platform companies, you can understand that they are different companies. So we provided just a general definition before, but maybe we need also to make some other classification in order to understand the specificity of each platform according to a more defined classification. And in order to do this, also in order to understand which type of platform these companies are leveraging in order to succeed in this scenario. In order to do this, I provide you with 2 different perspectives, because somehow for some aspects, they are quite similar, but each of them is adding something that can help you to better understand the overall picture. First of all, I will provide you with a perspective of the classification that Van Dijk, Poel, and De Waal are providing in order to classify different type of platforms according to the definition. And in particular, they make a distinction between the infrastructural platform and the industry platform. And we will see the infrastructural platform, and we will see that somehow the infrastructural platform are the key platform in our economy, but that these big companies are both infrastructural and industry platform. And then I will add also the perspective of Cusumano, Gower, and Ioffe, which are other scholars, in this case from the MIT, and they studied the business of platforms, and they, a couple of years ago, they provided a classification of a general classification of platform, make the distinction between transaction platforms and innovation platforms. So now we will go a little bit into these 2 perspectives in order to understand what is a platform company and the role of these companies in the market. But we need to add another small piece to this picture, because we need to understand a concept which is quite relevant. I already mentioned it maybe during the last lecture, which is the role of network effects in this company and in our society today, in our economy. Because in the end, the main driver and all the strategies of these companies are related to the network's effect and on the necessity to leverage network effects in order to generate value. Can anyone provide a definition of network effects? Maybe some of you that is coming from economics? Okay. So the network effects is related to this idea. It's an externality, it's a specific type of externality that is saying that the value of a product or a service perceived by each user depends on how many other users are using the same product or services, which is the idea. So for example, think about WhatsApp. The value for you of using WhatsApp is equal to 0 if you are the only user of this tool, because you cannot talk with anybody. So the value for you is equal to 0. If you start to add another user, you are seeing a little bit of an increasing in the value for you of this tool, because you can talk with someone else. But the higher the network, the higher the people that can use this technology with you, the higher the value for you of this tool. Okay, this is quite an example, but I don't know, do you have any other example in mind you want to try? Well, somehow is not incorrect, but it's not completely true, because it's not just like he's sending a lot, but because maybe the point is that NVIDIA is creating an ecosystem of people that are using its technology in order to do things and to generate other innovation. And so the fact that without them, it can be somehow a problem. But it's not just that they are selling a lot on the market. Okay, so this is quite the general idea of of network effects. So this idea that the value of a product is not just in the product or of the service, is not in the product or in the service itself, but depends in positive or in negative on how many other people and many other users are using this product or services. Why I stressed this idea of in positive or in negative? Because it's not just that if I have an increase in the dimension of the network, let me say, the ecosystem of people that are using, always I have an increasing in the value of the network. I can have also positive or negative effect. So with an increase, positive is the example of WhatsApp, but I can also have some negative network effects. So with an increase of the volume of users, I have a decrease in the value for me. And I can also have two other different categories of network effects. On one side, I can have same side of within group direct effects, network effects. So this is again the example of WhatsApp. WhatsApp is leveraging positive same side network effect. So the fact that if I'm considering the market in general term with some producers and some users, in the case of WhatsApp, the same side, the value increase when I have an increase of people, of users on the same side where I am. In this case, I'm in the final users of the technology. Uh, is not related to it depends. So first the point is that companies, in order to succeed in these platform companies, in order to succeed, must leverage network effects in an effective way. So WhatsApp was able to leverage for different reason its technology, its tool in a good way in Europe, but maybe for other reason, for example, because a stronger competition or because it was a follower in some regions, they arrived late, or there was some ban, for example. You can have somehow a company that is not able to leverage, and but usually these type of companies that are leveraging network effects, they try to scale on a global at a global level, because the higher the greatest the network, the greatest the value. So it's quite um, um, your example is an example of, let me say, bad management of the company in that specific area. The bad can depend from outside reason, but the point is that you need to scale to, and also the point is that it is difficult to somehow go towards these companies, because when they leverage so the biggest network in the world, it is quite difficult to leverage the same network. So it's difficult today to think about, for example, Amazon, which can somehow, you are a small startup and you decide to compete directly with Amazon, because the network that they are leveraging is so big that it's quite impossible to move toward them. But if you want to go more in depth in this topic, during digital economy, several lectures are designed in order to analyze the business strategies behind platforms. So go more in depth about also this aspect of developing platform business models. So I made the first example, which is the same side, same side within group or direct effect. So this idea, if I'm considering a market with producers and consumers, or producers and users, I have a direct effect, network effect, when the value of the network depends on users on the same side of the market, so users or producers. And I can have also cross-side, cross-group, or indirect network effects when the value depends on the number of users on the other side of the market. So think about Amazon. Your experience as a user, the value that you are putting in Amazon, in going on Amazon, depends on how many things you can find on it. So how many producers, how many companies are there in order to satisfy your needs with different products and services. If you go there and you find anything, for you the value is equal to 0 again. But in this case, the network effect is cross-side. So the value depends on the number of users on the other side. And again, I stress both positive and negative. So in all these cases, I can have both positive or negative same side network effects, or positive or negative cross-side network effects. And obviously, the point for a company is to leverage positive network effects and to avoid negative network effects. And this is just to give you a chart that can help you just to understand better these metrics of positive and negative network effects and cross-side and direct network effects. Here you can see some example of these metrics. So as I mentioned, we can have direct network effects, which are the within group network effects in the end, that can be both positive or negative. In the positive, direct network effects is when the users, this is the example of a social media platform or WhatsApp. So again, the value is higher, the greater the number of people that are accessing the products or the service on the same side of the platform. I can have also, and this again, this is a case, the example of a social media platform. But I can have also a negative direct network effect. So the higher the number of users that are accessing the platform on the same side as me, so the highest the volume, the lowest the value for me. Why? One example can be a big platform such as eBay in the beginning. So the highest the competition in terms of bidding people for a specific product, the lowest is the value for me on this platform, because the competition is higher. Maybe because, you know, in the beginning, eBay was mainly a platform for bidding on per le aste online in Italian. So the point is that if I have a lot of people with me on the same side, so as a bidder for a specific product, the value for me of this platform is going down because I have a lot of other people and me competing for the same product. So in this case, the effect is negative. As in a company, a platform or company, I need to somehow manage this negative effect in order to push people on my platform. Then I can have also cross-site network effect. So the example of Amazon, that can be both, again, positive or negative. Positive cross-site network effect is the example, again, of a online marketplace or payment systems. So if this idea of the highest, the number of people, of users on the other, or producers on the other side, the highest for me the value. But I can also have negative cross-group effect, cross-site network effects, when, for example, this is the case of online advertising. I have too many advertising on, for example, on YouTube. The value for me, the value for me of being on YouTube is going down. So again, also in this case, the strategy of a platform company that want to succeed is to leverage the positive effect, but to minimize the negative. So for obvious reason, when you go to YouTube, maybe you see one advertisement, not like 50, because you have to manage the value of the network for your people. You have to manage network effects because the value is coming from network effects. So I gave you a brief definition of platforms, and I stress this idea of the network effects as a focus, a key, the main driver for platforms in order to succeed in the market. So again, I have platforms, are companies, are somehow digital platforms are powered by data with specific technological features and business relationships that are able to succeed thanks to positive network effects. But then we can go a little bit more in depth into the different classification of platforms that I introduced to you a little bit earlier. This is the definition, the distinction that is provided by Van Dijk, Powell, and De Waal about the difference between infrastructural and industry platforms. So here the point is that, okay, I can define in general terms platform, but not all the platforms are the same. And according to different types of platform, I can have also different capacity in terms of generating value and to concentrate power in the economy. So according to them, the infrastructural platforms are the most influential type of platforms, and many of these are owned and managed by the big 5 high-tech companies. So here we are somehow saying that, okay, the biggest company today in terms of market capitalization are infrastructural platforms. But what are these platforms? They represent the basis of the ecosystem on which other platform and application can be built. So they are quite the basis for the rest of the economy, the digital economy. And they also function as gatekeepers because they manage data flows and they support the processing and the storage of data, because in the end, both processing and storage is happening within this platform. And I can provide you with some example. We can consider infrastructural platforms, for example, the search engines or the browsers, data servers and cloud computing, email and instant messaging services, social networks, advertising networks, app stores, payment system. So these are example infrastructural networks on which data are flowing around companies, among people in the society. So they are somehow providing the backbone of the flows of information. You remember when we talk about the network society, we stress this idea of the flow in the network. So they are somehow managing the flows among the nodes in the society, companies or people. So they are quite, and the definition is quite clear, they are quite the infrastructure of the information age. Note this point, that building infrastructural platform is not a prerogative of companies and or corporation, so it's not a prerogative of the private sector. On the contrary, traditionally, the building infrastructure is a public-private matter. But however, in 2018, the core of the Western online infrastructure, so the backbone of our society and our economy, is completely privatized. So the name that we saw in the previous chart, which somehow are managing like a relevant part of our infrastructure, day-by-day infrastructure in terms of working or living, they are private companies. They are not public companies. But as I mentioned, historically, the creation of physical infrastructure, for example, roads or critical infrastructures, such as railways, motorways, or the internet, has always been based on a mix of public-private investment. So traditionally, also the public had a role in developing infrastructure, physical infrastructure, or with, let me say, infrastructure with a public good component. So the fact that it's somehow affecting people's lives, so the state need to manage and to control how these infrastructure are developed in order to assure that some specific also services are provided to all the people in order to avoid inequalities or somehow some imbalance in our society. For example, think at why railroads or motorways, because also if it is not economically viable to develop a road in a small town in the mountain, the state must build that road because people need to go from the mountain to the city, and it's let me say, a duty of the state to provide these services. A private company is not working in this way. A private company is looking mainly at the economically viable part of the business. So if I'm losing money in building something, I'm not going to build it. This is quite to simplify, but this is the point of the difference. And today, the point is that today, government, public institutions, NGOs, they can manage their own platform. So we can we can hear about maybe the European Union or other organization or public institutions that are discussing about developing public infrastructures or public-private infrastructures, public platforms. But there is no public space in the current ecosystem of platforms managed by corporations. So again, today it is quite difficult to have, maybe we are trying to discuss about this, but it is quite difficult to go through the dimension of the network of the ecosystem of companies such as, for example, Microsoft or Google or AWS, again, for example, in providing cloud computing services to companies. They are quite gatekeeping the market. And this is quite an issue today that also in public opinion in Europe we are discussing in order to, for example, assure security of our online infrastructures. So some scholars believe also that the big five's infrastructure platform function as utilities or super platforms because they provide key underlying information services on which other industry platform can be overlaid or built upon. So here the point is that we need to consider the balance between this idea of the convenience of accessing these services and the topic of controlling the data. So maybe it is convenience to access some specific services or products, but we need also to consider the fact, and this is something that you will stress for sure with Professor Ricci in the juridical issue part, but also the topic, for example, of privacy and of the ownership of the data is something that must be considered and evaluated in order to avoid political, environmental, or ethical risks. And these are some of the topics that you will discuss with Professor Masiero. And just to finish the contents of this slide, infrastructure platform can gain unprecedented power because they are uniquely capable of connecting and combining data streams and merging business information and intelligence. So this point that they are, thanks to this idea again of connecting, on creating links among people and business and analyzing and processing data that are flowing among them, that they are able to gain an unprecedented power. I will go through the other part, the industry platform, and then we will have a short break. So I mentioned the infrastructural platforms, and I told that, for example, search engines, cloud computing, or this type of platforms are infrastructural platforms. So somehow they are supporting the development of other platforms in our economic society. And then we have the other platforms, the industry platform. These platforms are those that operate for a specific sector or category. For example, in the mobility, in transport sector, in catering, education, health, finance, or hospitality. So they are quite, let me say, vertical. this is quite a common statement related to platforms in general, but we now see this is quite a statement related to this type of platform, so the industry platform. They do not own tangible asset, do not employ specialized personnel, and do not offer tangible product or services. This is a quite famous example of Airbnb. Airbnb does not employ specialized personnel like cooks or people working in the hotel or and they don't need, an Airbnb does not own facilities, again, hotels and so on. They just own the platform that is connecting people. And they are connectors, and indeed, so for this reason, they are considered connectors between individual users and individual suppliers. And for this reason, they can also be called connective platforms. And so this is quite a point, but connective platforms depend on companies, organizations, or individuals who provide complementary products and services to end users through platforms by creating links between different sites and therefore constituting multi-sided markets. So just avoid, so the point here is that we are stressing the idea of the relevance of the networks in this type of platforms again. So the fact that the highest the number of people that are somehow playing around this platform, the highest the value of this platform and the ability of this platform to generate value that they can monetize, because also one of the point of these companies the companies that are succeeding in this market are also the ones that are very good in monetizing the value, because you can also put all the people together and you can have this extremely huge network ecosystem with a lot of interaction, but if you are not able to transform the flow, the interaction in actual money, in the end, it is just a free platform. And the value for you, the economic value of the owner of the platform is equal to zero. You just enable a pub. And this is quite a problem somehow for companies that want to be successful as platform companies, and in particular industry platform companies. It is quite challenging to find the right strategy in order to monetize this flow of value among an example of monetization is you can experience it on Amazon is apply a fee on your transaction, or maybe is applying some advertising. This is another way of monetizing the interaction. So this is quite the picture. Question, doubts, consideration? Okay, so we can have a short break, like 5-10 minutes, and then we can be here back, okay? So, actually, I forgot a slide from the previous, so I have also a final slide from the distinction between industry, infrastructural, and industry platform. And then we will go into the other perspective, which is the perspective from the MIT of Gower and Yoffe about, Cusumano, Gower, and Yoffe about, again, some classification of platforms. So why there is also another point that we need to stress in order to understand the relevance of the companies that we mentioned in the beginning, because they are not just one type of platform I mentioned. Maybe in the beginning I mentioned this idea of the networked platform. So somehow these companies are managing to leverage both type of platforms, so the infrastructural platform and industry platform. So somehow they are building the online infrastructure behind sectors, the companies, the economy, but also they are somehow go vertical to some specific sectors, to some specific areas, in order to leverage and generate value from processing and analyzing data in that specific areas. So, for example, if you think at companies such as Google, Alphabet and Google, they are for sure well known for providing cloud computing, search engines, browsers, and email facilities, and so on. And we saw these are infrastructural platforms, but they started, for example, providing also infotainment services. So they became providers, platform in specific verticals in the automotive, or Amazon some years ago started to work, for example, in the area of healthcare. So not just the infrastructure behind, but also in some specific area where data are more valuable than maybe in other sectors. So the platform ecosystem, we mentioned this idea, so not just considering today a solo platform in economy, but more and more we are seeing constellation, we are seeing like a galaxy of platforms working together under maybe just one brand that are generating some powerful ecosystem in our economy. And here you can see some example of where the big five that I mentioned in the beginning are available. They are working also in some specific industries, for example, in urban transport, in health and fitness, in the information media sector, and in education. So we are witnessing a phenomenon of infiltration of infrastructural platforms in specific sectors. And it is not a stable state over time, but subject to continuous evolution, so in hybrid status. So these companies are also moving in terms of strategies from one area to the others. They are also spreading from one sector to the other. And also, in these cases, they somehow are becoming, for example, I made the example of Google in the infotainment, and somehow they became the gatekeeper also for the information in your car. So where you are going, what you are doing, which type of music are you hearing. Everything is managed through a platform, which somehow is managing your experience in the car, and somehow it can become also the gatekeeper for other players to arrive to you, also in terms of marketing or other type of action. So this is the perspective of Van Dijk, De Waal, and Poel. Now I want to add another perspective, another classification that can help you to add some other feature to platforms in order to understand better this phenomenon, which is quite relevant and available everywhere. And here I'm providing you with the classification by Cusumano, Gower, and Ioffe. They provided this chart in 2019 in a book which is called The Business of Platform. And they are, as I mentioned, scholars from MIT. And they just simplify the overall picture of platforms in the world, providing two types of platforms, saying that we have two types of platform. On one side, the transaction platform, and on the other side, the innovation platform. And somehow you can see that you can also in the names, you can see that there are some similarities with the definition that I previously showed you. So according to them, platforms, transaction platforms serve as an intermediary for direct exchange on transactions subject to network effects. So the point here again is on transaction, enable transaction among people. So in connecting users and generating value through the sharing of products, services, information among this user. Again, here is the example, if you know the name of the companies that are mentioned. LinkedIn, sharing information, sharing CV among people somehow. Social media, and also Amazon Marketplace are mentioned as example of transaction platform. On the other side, we have a platform, the innovation platforms. And in this case, this platform, the innovation platform, are the technological foundation upon which other firms can build, can develop complementary innovation. So here the point is that the platform is made of technological building blocks that companies, platform companies in this case, can provide to other users, for example, software developers or other IT professional in order to develop, for example, application, other technologies, for example, also, or other platforms. One quite easy example of innovation platform, according to them, is the cloud computing. So cloud computing can be considered, is quite different from Amazon Marketplace, but can be considered a platform because somehow it enables the technological building blocks that other people, again, IT professionals, software developers, and so on, can leverage in order to build other stuff. Mobile application, platforms, and so on. So two different types of platform that somehow can be reconciled with this idea of infrastructural platform and industry platform, but with different features, so stressing different features. So just to go a little bit further in the definition, innovation platform are made up of technological building blocks that the owner of the platform or other players in the ecosystem around the platform can share to create new complementary products or services. Again, cloud computing is an example, but also operating system, because I enable software develop, mobile software develop to develop mobile application on it, which are somehow complementary because they are increasing the value of a specific, for example, also device, or in general, if I made this example with your colleague during the break, but Microsoft, the mobile operating system of Microsoft was a failure because somehow it had no software developers working on it. So no mobile application on this. And you can understand that the network effect was not really working on this platform. And so here the keyword is complementarity. So new products and services add new features or allow access to resources that increase the usefulness and therefore the value of the platform. So the higher the number of other innovation, other softwares, other piece of technologies that can be built on my platform, the higher is the value of the platform. And yes, a few examples, the smartphone with the system operator and the app stores, the cloud computing, or also the streaming platform, because somehow streaming platforms are, okay, now also providing contents. But in the beginning, they provided the infrastructure through which users can have access easily to movies, videos, and so on. So the point is providing the rules behind, the technological rules, let me say. I'm an economist, I'm not using a technical vocabulary, but the point is that they are providing the technological rules behind in order to provide services and products to users. And then we have the transaction platforms, which are large online intermediaries or marketplaces that allow individuals and organizations to share information and buy, sell, gain access to a wide variety of goods and services. Again, in this case, the network's effects are more related with the users. So the greater the number of participant information, products, or services available through the platform, the more useful it will be deemed and will be able to attract new users. In this case, a few examples are Google Search or Amazon Marketplace, Facebook, or social media in general, where the focus in this case is on information, so on sharing information. So in order to arrive at almost the end of today's lecture, I want to stress a point that I already started to mention a few slides ago, but this is the role, or somehow the contrast, or the need for a better balancing between public value and private interest in the platform society. As we mentioned before, today, in particular, infrastructure companies are mainly private-owned companies. In Western countries in particular. And the point is that historically, on the contrary, infrastructures, physical infrastructures, were private-public driven. And this is quite a key point to be stressed in considering the social impact of the diffusion of these platforms in our society and in our economy. And in order to better understand this point, it is quite useful to introduce the concept of the public value. So why usually infrastructures, physical infrastructure historically had a public participation in the development? Because they had a public value. They were usually leveraging a public good or a sphere that is relevant for public and for the society that must be leveraged. For example, I mentioned before the example of the railroads or the motorway in the mountains. So here the point is that the public value is the value that an organization brings to society for the benefit of the common good. So here is the value to stress the fact that we need also to consider the common good behind maybe some of these infrastructure. And the common good is often translated into a series of propositions through a process of collective participation, which is focused on the creation of a shared set of norms and values. And in this, so we talk about the fact that for sure some infrastructure had some, are stressing some public sphere area of interest. But however, the creating public value, so this idea of the value that an organization can bring to the society according to a common good is not something which is related only to the public sector. So the point that some scholars are stressing is the fact that the creation of public value for the common good should represent the shared responsibility of the social actors, business, civil society, and government. So here we see again the topic that we mentioned about the role of the shift from a shareholder capitalism to a stakeholder capitalism that we mentioned on Friday. So this idea that maybe we need also to shift from an economic model focused only on economic value to an economic model that is also can take into consideration also the public value in order to bring value to the society, in order to foster the common good. And the problem is that in the platform society, the creation of public value aimed at the common good is often confused with the creation of economic value that serves indiscriminately public and private interest. Again, so also here we are stressing this idea of a shift in how we are considering like the economic relationship, the social relationship related to the diffusion of these technologies, shifting from just some economic aspects on just the focus just only on economic value, but also look at the public value and the stakeholders around the economy that we mentioned. For example, again, the civil society, the environment, and more in general, individuals that are somehow working and living around on these platforms. Indeed, the platform society, the structure of platform society is not determined once and for all. So we stressed this topic also before. So it is nothing like this is the picture and we must just deal with that. The picture is changing, relationships are changing, so we need to understand them and to consider all the, as I mentioned in the beginning, all the aspects that can influence them. And also because social values can be affected by different type of relationship and how this relationship and also the social structure is evolving. And this is quite one point. So they are introducing, Van Dijk, Poel, and De Waal are introducing this idea of the negotiable social contract related to the platform society. In this idea, again, that we are not talking about something which is stable and that cannot be changed, but we need to reconsider and working on the balance among the different actors, businesses, government, civil society. For example, we mentioned in the previous lectures the labor union and so on, or other NGOs or other organizations, people organization. They need to find a new balance and to renegotiate the social contract. So the rules of relationship, the set of rules that define the relationship among these people today. I want to provide you with two examples of how technologies, in particular digital platforms, are affecting some specific sectors, providing also some, let me say, again, social issues or issues in general that must be faced or already are faced or that are well known and that we are trying to manage in order to avoid or minimize them. The first example is about the media sector, the area of information. So what is changed in this sector? So usually, we know today different players are involved. We have digital platforms, journalistic and fast-checking organization, users reading, advertisers. So a lot of people involved in this sector. And traditionally, just to simplify the structure of the sector, but just to make it clear, we had some gatekeeper, traditional gatekeeper of the sector, the journalist, the expert of this area, who had the role and it was in charge to discover relevant information as a public service mainly, and to provide, to manage it and to provide it in order to improve the public knowledge of specific arguments. Again, with the advertisement somehow with a role in order to manage the economics, but again, it was quite structured in this way. And usually we had also few or some newspapers or some traditional platform aggregators of information where people had access to articles or in general information. For example, the newspaper. When I brought the newspaper, I found a lot of different information. And I bought overall the set of information that the articles they are providing me. What happened with the introduction of digital platforms? So the information industry was subject to two processes. First of all, disaggregation. So the focus was no more on overall the newspaper, but on the single article. For example, also in the beginning, also, but what you can find when you can find some through search engines some information and you can access to a specific article without looking at the rest of the newspapers or the platforms. So the focus is on the single article. So a disaggregation, or I'm posting the single article. So a disaggregation of the information. I'm not looking at like the aggregator, the newspaper, the traditional media company, but the single content. And then I have new form of reaggregation, because for sure in this perspective also accessing information is becoming quite challenging, because if I don't have like a space where to access all the information I need, can become quite difficult. So I have some form of reaggregation with the spread of new aggregators of feed readers. But somehow these are different players than before. So I have a traditional structure of the newspaper, for example, which is somehow brought to the online platform, the digital platform, so disaggregated, and then reaggregated, following different rules. So this is quite a change for the different players that were involved in this sector traditionally. And digital technologies also enable the concept of quantifying the audience. So now we can somehow quantify how the minutes for reading a specific article, how long you stay on a specific page, how many people are clicking on a specific article. So everything somehow can be quantified, which is different from traditional newspaper. And so the process of producing news somehow is becoming maybe not fully, totally, but not fully data-driven, but for sure it was much more data-driven than before, with a focus on audience engagement and measurement as the main goal of information. So here you can now understand, maybe you were already aware, but for example, the clickbait, this idea of the point of writing some very catchy title for article just to make people click on it, because you need measurement, you need to quantify. But this is you are putting the numbers, the quantification, above the role of information somehow in this way. And so we have also, with this new restructuring of the sector, enabled by digital platform, the spread of phenomenon such as the filter bubbles. So somehow also in social media, you are experiencing all information, or are you put through contents that are only intensifying or confirming your idea? And this is quite not useful in order to provide discussion and support also the free sharing of information or misinformation with the spread of deep fakes and so on. We saw in the year some attempts to intervene in this area, both from legislation, but also from by some platform companies as well. For example, Facebook tried in the beginning, maybe today a little bit less, to support true journalism, but we know that they decided to just take some not so open-minded decision about fact-checking. And the Google News initiative, again, just some initiatives in order to try to minimize the spreading of misinformation on their platform. So this is an example of changes brought in some social issues that we need to face, or already we are facing, for example, with legislation in a specific tech sector, so in the information area. Here we have another example, which is the platformization of urban transport. So again, thanks, so it's a positive aspect. So thanks to digital technologies or digital platform, mobility, the experience of mobility for customers, for people, for citizens in urban areas is expanded enormously. For example, with ride sharing, car sharing, this type of services, with carpooling, or mass platform, mobility as a service platform. So this idea that I have traditional companies that are somehow offering the experience of mobility through their apps, for example, just putting together different services from train, urban transport, or car sharing, all in a unique platform in order to generate an end-to-end experience of mobility. In this scenario, mobility services become data-driven. So we also experienced an optimization, let me say, of a urban transport, urban services, thanks to data-driven, thanks to data, and thanks to a data-driven approach. Because, for example, now we are much more aware of the timing of the timing of transport. For example, I can know exactly where my train or so on is. Well, sometimes it's not a good news, but you know where, if there are some delay or not, you have a better view of your experience. And also geospatial information. So I can also put this information in the space and better qualify the information. And this can help to increase the quality of the services. And in this scenario, optimization, as I mentioned, and feedback became essential in order to, for example, increase the operation and the quality of services. Just for a moment, not consider the public transport, but for example, in considering services such as Uber or BlaBlaCar or this type of services, the feedback is quite relevant in order to decide if I want to access a specific service or not, in terms of how many stars or how many, I don't know what, is provided on the platform. But it's quite relevant in order to somehow define how the quality of the service. But as I mentioned, and this is quite a strong point to be addressed, some services, if leveraging a data-driven approach in urban transport, so with maybe a better capacity of private companies of doing this. So maybe private companies such as Uber or so on are better in using these technologies, so somehow are providing better and services with a higher quality than maybe public service. However, some services I mentioned cannot be assured, for example, because they are not economically viable. For a private company, again, providing a bus service that is going to the mountain where 5 people are living is not economically viable, so I'm not providing that services. But from a public perspective, from a public value perspective, I need that service for the people because I need to assure to everybody the same service. So again, this is something that must be faced and solved. And this is our last slide, which is somehow the shift, the final shift from this idea of a platform economy that we saw is not like equal for everybody economy, let me say. So we saw a few companies in terms of economic value, geographical distribution, that are much more effective in operating in the market. And so maybe not all the platforms are the same. So for this reason, maybe it's not a good idea, or well, we can talk about the platform economy, but maybe it's better to shift to the term hub economy. So to this idea that we are experiencing somehow a winner-take-all scenario. So we have a few hub firms, again, the firms that we saw from the first slide until now, that not only dominate a single market, and we saw in many cases they are both infrastructural platform, industry platforms, innovation platforms, transaction platforms, but they create and control essential connection in the networks that today shape the economy. So again, if we, just to close the circle from the first lecture, if you are considering our economy, our society based on networks, they somehow are controlling, they create and control the essential connection in these networks. And platforms and digital companies create competitive bottlenecks since they own the access to billions of consumers that other product and services providers want to reach. So somehow, today, they are leveraging, they are leveraging ecosystem, they are becoming quite the market. And if I am a small player and I want today to, for example, sell online my products, it's not so easy not to be on Amazon, for example, because I know that the majority of the market somehow is there. I'm just making example with the names, but we can shift the name with another example. But the point is that somehow they are becoming quite the gatekeeper of the market. In order to arrive to the final consumer, I need to go through them because they also own the information, the data of the owner, so they are better in charge in order to provide the consumer with a better experience in terms of quality, velocity, and overall the experience. And hub firms take the network-based assets that have already reached scale in one industry and use them to enter another industry. So the other point, as this is something that we mentioned again, when we talk about the fact, for example, that Google entered in the infotainment, in the automotive sector, the point is that they are somehow, they scale, they start to scale in a specific area, in a specific sector, or in a specific area, again, for example, with search engines, if I'm talking about infrastructural platforms or cloud computing. And then when I scale in this area and I reach some relevant network effects and I'm leveraging a quite strong ecosystem, I can decide to shift to another sector, maybe an adjacent one, in order to leverage that same network, the same ecosystem, in order to apply it in the new sector. So this is quite a domino scenario. And for this, and again, when they enter, in the case, as I mentioned before, of Google, they became in the new sector the new gatekeeper. Again, Google in the automotive sector, they are somehow managing the technology that is controlling maybe not the technical part of the machine, but all the information on the how the driver is driving, where he is going, the music that he is hearing, and so on. So again, if I am a provider that want to arrive to this information, I need to go through Google or other platform companies that at the moment are leveraging that information. And for this reason, we are adding a new law to the ones that Professor Marziero already mentioned in the first lecture. So for this reason, we are talking about not only the Moore laws and the Metcalfe's laws, but also we are talking about the Barabasi laws. That somehow he is telling us that not all the nodes are the same, but some nodes are able to collect a higher volume of flows, and for this reason they have a higher power than others. And for this reason they are capable of start the so-called digital domino effect. So this idea that I start in a specific area and then I can shift as a domino in other areas in order to dominate also the other. So this is the bibliography and the suggested readings for today. Mainly, the first one is the reference book for today. Again, slides are enough. It's also quite interesting, the second one that I mentioned, in order to give you the differences between innovation platform and transaction platform. If someone wants to go more in depth in some business-related aspects of platforms. And you can find also some articles from the Economist or the HBR, so the Harvard Business Review magazine, that are quite interesting in order to understand, for example, this idea of the hub economy or the role of the data in competition around the world. So with this, I want to thank you to follow my lecture until now. So if you have questions, I'm still here a couple of minutes. And then if you need something, just write me an email, okay? And again, same hours, same places with Professor Mazero starting from Friday.